Hello and welcome to the August 30th edition of the Gold, Goats, and Guns Short News. My name is Tom Luongo. We have a lot to talk about. And today I want to talk about Europe. Specifically, I want to talk about Europe, NATO, Donald Trump, and the latest statement by Emmanuel Macron, the French president, at a press conference in Helsinki alongside the Finnish president, where he outlined a new vision for a strategic relationship with Russia and Turkey. That, quote, "It is in our interest for the EU to have a strategic relationship with Turkey as well with Russia that brings stability, that will in the long term and bring more strength and coherency." So Macron has been a very interesting figure on this front. He's been calling for and organizing for a grand army of the EU, for lack of a better term. This call, and he goes on. He talks about Crimea and saying, look, it's not about forgetting the last few years. That wouldn't be right, but simply a realistic means to cooperate more deeply. That Russian EU relations need to be brought up to date. This is from Reuters. It was reported in Reuters. I saw this originally on Sputnik, and it was just a stub, and it wasn't with only the Russia specific stuff excerpted out. This is a big deal. This is the French president calling the current situation between the EU and Russia as unsustainable and needs to be addressed. It's calling into question by the French president the very definition of NATO's mission, which is an extension of what Donald Trump was saying at the NATO summit when he told all of them, this is insane, right? Trump at the NATO summit, if you remember, said, why are we paying for your defense, Germany, to guard against the threat of a Russian invasion when you're buying all of your energy from Russia? And now you're going to build another pipeline that comes from Russia. It doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't. So which is it? Are they a threat or are they a business partner? Are they a good neighbor or are they the evil empire? Because NATO is predicated on the idea that the continent of Europe has to be protected against another Russian invasion. That's what the Poles and the Baltics keep claiming every day. NATO keeps moving more troops and having exercises closer and closer to the Russian border. And clear provocations here by NATO. And Trump has been calling all of this into question since he was on the campaign trail back in 2016. And the level of desperation that I see out of NATO over this worry that the gravy train might end is insane. It's quite stunning, actually. And then we have this. All of this is occurring, right, less than a week and a half after Angela Merkel and Vladimir Putin have a garden summit where they're having a lovely chat over mineral water with fountains in the background and all. I mean, it's crazy, right? And Heiko Maas, the German foreign minister, calls for a new payment system to replace SWIFT within the EU to get around your US sanctions so that they can still continue to do business with whoever they like. This is a clear declaration of independence by both Germany and France on the two most important issues to the EU, which is financial independence and defense independence. Now, the interesting part about this is that at the same time as the EU leadership, i.e. Macron and Merkel, are making these claims and making these bold statements, we have Ayatollah Khamenei in Iran saying the Europeans aren't doing enough to make us feel comfortable with maintaining the JCPOA, otherwise known as the Iran nuclear deal, and that we should just abandon it, which is a clear threat to them to Europe that they need to move very quickly on all of these issues if they want to retain a working relationship with Iran. Iran can now threaten the world effectively with them restarting their nuclear program. Now, I'm not of the opinion that Iran has been working directly towards a nuclear weapon for years. I think they mothballed their nuclear weapons program when they said they did. The problem is that they outsourced it to the North Koreans while they worked on the ballistic missile technology. And that's the working hypothesis that I know Donald Trump has been operating under, because he tweeted about it in last September, a year ago. And it was been my operating thesis for more than a year. And so that's why Trump was so angry about the JCPOA, because it gave Iran sanctions relief without actually having them give up anything. But then again, the sanctions were put on for false reasons in the first place. So it's all really just a whole bunch of chest beating and geopolitical positioning over resources and control and everything else. So I find all of this really interesting that now, today, we have Macron coming out and saying these things, while everybody is threatening the Russians and Syria to not stage another chemical weapons attack when the offensive to retake Idlib begins soon in the next few days. The Russians have a massive naval force off the coast. The U.S. has moved naval assets in there as well. The French are daring the Syrians to not stage another false flag attack. And none of it makes any sense. Of course, they're the last 3 chemical weapons attacks, going all the way back to 2013. None of these were perpetrated by the Assad government. They have all were false flags. They haven't been proven to be anything other than that. That's the closest thing we've got that's the closest thing explanation that we have to fit the data for at least the last 2. Because Assad is winning. Why would he gas his own people? Doesn't make any sense. Why would he do the one thing that would ensure a violent response from the US, the UK, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and France? Doesn't make any sense. Didn't make any sense back in April. Didn't make any sense last April. And yet, this is the story that we're being told on a regular basis. So, all of this is happening at the same time. And this is really interesting. Now let's add one other thing on top. Martin Armstrong was talking about this morning in a blog post, and I'll put a link down below, that the rumor is that Turkey's going to default, sticking the European banks with a couple $100 billion worth of worthless corporate debt. We've got emerging market currencies this morning crashing to the Brazilian real, the Argentinian peso. They're all going, the South African rand, they're all going into the complete crapper. Then Turkey's going to default? These are your signs that we're entering into the period of extreme financial instability coming into this fall, with the midterm elections and Brexit talks and potential for further unrest in places like France and Germany. We've got riots in Germany that the Germans can't control. This is these are very, very tenuous times. And so it's very interesting that that's going to happen at the same time as the Europeans are finally starting to realize that they have to change the way they have to change the relationship, because Trump has changed the game on the relationship between the US and the EU. Moreover, last little bit of news this morning, there looks like there's a breakthrough in tariff talks between the US and Germany over automobiles. And the Germans are willing to scrap their import duties on cars if we scrap our import duties on light trucks and, pickups and light trucks. So far, we haven't heard anything from the Americans about this. That's a major concession. But as much as we like to accuse the Germans of protectionism on their automobile market, we do that as well. And if not more so. It makes certain brands of pickup trucks, unprofitable to bring to the United States. Volkswagens, for example, can't bring it over here. It's too expensive. They don't make it here. So, this is looking like we're getting to that moment where the narrative is completely turned. And the usefulness of NATO is openly being questioned now by both sides, not just Donald Trump. And both sides are taking practical steps to push each other in the directions that they wanted to go anyway. Trump wants to go home, not pay for NATO anymore. Germany and France want an independent foreign policy. Vladimir Putin sitting back and going, sounds good to me. Let's do it. This has been the Gold, Goats, and Guns short news for Thursday, August 30th, 2018. If you liked what you heard today, give a like and subscribe down below. That'd be great. You can follow my work over at tomluongo.me or goldgoatsandguns.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at TFL1728. You guys have a great afternoon. You take care. Keep your stick on the ice.